All right, so this next unit we're going to be talking about motivation, emotion, and stress. And we're going to start by focusing in on this idea of what motivates us. What is human motivation? So, motivation, our textbook definition, refers to a need or a desire that energizes behavior and directs it towards a goal. So, these are two really important key terms to understand here. Energizing. When you say you're energizing a behavior, it means you're getting somebody to do something. They're getting up, they're moving, they're doing, they're acting, okay? And it directs it. So the behavior also is going to have a direction. Now, notice that there's no positive or negative here. It's all just about the actual kind of like getting a human being to do something in a directed kind of focused towards a goal. So for example, we're going to talk about this more in class, but Alan Ralston found the motivation to cut off his own arm when he was trapped in a cliff in Utah in 2003. So again, he was trapped, he was stuck in a cave. This motivation he found energized him, directed him to cut off his own arm, which obviously is not something common that happens, but if need be, it is something that human beings are capable of, even if it's not anything that we can kind of fathom when we're not in that situation. When we talk about the different motivations, what motivated him to do this? Was it hunger? Was he so hungry that he was willing to chop off his own arm? Was it survival? Was he so motivated to live that he was willing to do this? So some of the things that we're going to explore in this unit are what are some of the different human motivators and what effects do those have on our behavior? So one of the most basic things in terms of motivation that's out there is an instinct. Okay, now the big question is how much do instincts direct human behavior? How many instincts do we have left over the course of evolution? So an instinct is a fixed or rigid and predictable pattern of behavior that is not acquired by learning and is likely to be rooted in genes and the body. Okay, so the key points here are not acquired by learning. We do not learn instincts. These are things that we do naturally, even if we have never seen this behavior before. Okay, we have the instinct to do that. Okay, and it's likely rooted in genes and the body, meaning that there is a genetic predisposition. Now, whenever we see this pop up on the test, they like to throw in the word predisposition. Okay, so make sure you're kind of looking for that in relationships to instincts. So it's not learned, it's unlearned. Okay, and there's kind of a genetic predisposition through this. Now, when we say something is instinctual, we mean that it shows up in all members of the species. Okay, so what would be an example of that? Well, for instance, birds. Okay, birds nest. All birds know how to make a nest. Now granted, each type of bird is going to have their own one kind of singular type of nest that they make. Now, in humans also have nesting behavior. People buy houses. People will go and buy houses, and when women are pregnant, and even men to a degree, when their mates are pregnant, they go into what's called nesting, meaning they have this urge, this drive to fix up, to make sure that there is a home that's safe and secure and comfortable for their children. And in a lot of women, they describe it as almost uncontrollable, that they can't sleep, they can't do anything else, like they're in this nesting overdrive where they just want to make sure the nursery's perfect and everything's put in its place. And a lot of times they'll repaint and they'll reupholster and they'll do all these kind of things. The house will be immaculately clean, and they'll put these honey-do lists for their husbands to do all this kind of stuff. So again, some people would say that is kind of our leftover nesting instinct in humans. Now, from an evolutionary perspective, other species have genetically programmed instincts motivating their actions. To humans, well, humans have reflexes, okay? We definitely still have some instinctual reflexes that we'll talk more about when we talk about development, okay? But our behavior is less prescribed by genetics than other animals, and there's a lot of evolutionary kind of reasons for that. However, we have general patterns of behavior which can be explained as emerging through natural selection. So again, the behaviors that were important for our ancestors' survival kind of stuck with us, and so those kind of patterns of behaviors, we could be deemed instinctual. But the instinct theory has given way to evolutionary theory in explaining human behavior. So we kind of don't refer to it so much as instincts any longer as we do more kind of the evolutionary theory of behavior. And again, we'll come back to this in a different chapter. Now, drive reduction is another thing that we talk about in terms of motivating behavior. And a drive is an aroused or tense state that's related to a physical need, such as hunger or thirst. Okay, so when we talk about drives, we're usually talking about physical states. Now, the drive reduction theory refers to the idea that humans are motivated to reduce these drives, such as eating, to reduce the feeling of hunger. This restores this idea of homeostasis. Remember that internal, steady body state. So how does this work? Well, you have a need. You need food. We need water, right? These are survival. Now, when your body needs those things, it produces a drive. It makes you hungry. It makes you thirsty. Those are uncomfortable, right? We don't like it when we're hungry. We don't like it when we're thirsty. They get our attention. They call our focus. So those drives, the uncomfortable state that we are in when we have these drives, then motivate us to perform drive-reducing behaviors, such as getting something to eat or getting something to drink. Now, drives, are based on inner needs and can be seen as a force pushing us pushing kind of inside of us. Well, what about incentives? Okay, well, incentives are external things that either appeal to our need or trigger our adverse feelings and can be used to pull us into our actions. Okay, so drives are more kind of like inner needs, and then they push us to do something, right? When you're hungry, it's like your stomach is like pushing you, go eat, go get something to eat. Okay, now incentives tend to be external things that appeal to our needs. Okay, or they trigger our adverse feelings, but they can be used to pull us in. So for instance, maybe you're not hungry, but you drive by In-N-Out Burger and you smell it, right? That external smell of the yummy, delicious French fries and hamburgers. They're going to pull you in, right? It's kind of like that unconscious, like all of a sudden you're driving to In-N-Out Burger even though you're not necessarily hungry. So drives push, incentives pull. They're external. Drives are internal, incentives external, and then there's the push and pull kind of dynamic. Um, so other examples, we have a drive to have food or money. We can exchange it for food, right? And employers can use the prospect of a raise in or elimination of a salary as an incentive for us to follow employer goals and policies. So again, drives, internal, incentives, external. All right, so we're going to wrap it up here. Next time we're going to talk about probably one of the most important things that you will learn in this course in terms of understanding human behavior, and that is Maslow's hierarchy of needs.